International sanctions. You hear about them all the time, right? They're talked about as this sophisticated diplomatic tool, a way to punish bad actors on the world stage without actually, starting a war. But is that really what they are? Are they a precise tool for justice? Or are they more like a blunt weapon that causes a ton of collateral damage? Let's dig in and explore what these things are really all about.
So, let's just start with the basic problem. A country breaks a huge international rule. Say it invades its neighbor. What do? I mean, a full-on war could be an absolute catastrophe. It's a massive dilemma. And for decades, the world's go-to answer for this has been sanctions. They're sold to us as this perfect middle ground, a really tough response that keeps the soldiers at home.
So first up, let's look at the idea behind them. The ideal. In a perfect world, sanctions are actually a pretty elegant solution. They're designed to be this formal, legal way for the whole world to act together to keep the peace, without anyone having to fire a shot.
And this isn't just some vague idea either. It's literally written into the United Nations Charter. Article 41 gives the Security Council the power to use measures not involving the use of armed force. That's the legal foundation for the whole thing. The key concept here is that they're supposed to be an alternative to war, not just another form of it.
Okay, so what does a sanction actually look like in the real world? Well, think of it like a whole toolkit. It can be something huge, like a massive economic blockade that just strangles all trade and investment. Or it can be a bit more surgical, like an arms embargo to stop weapons from getting in, or cutting off oil sales to choke off a regime's cash flow. It can even get personal, freezing a leader's secret bank accounts or banning them from traveling. But the goal is always the same: apply pressure.
But here's where it gets really important. Not all sanctions are the same. They basically fall into two big categories, and it all depends on who's imposing them. This one difference can be what separates a sanction with real bite from one that's just for show.
On one side, you have unilateral sanctions. That's when one country just decides to go it alone. The problem? These are usually more of a political statement than anything else. In a global economy, the country being sanctioned can almost always find someone else to trade with. But on the other side, you have multilateral sanctions. These are coordinated through a body like the UN. Now, these can be incredibly powerful because they close off almost all the escape routes. The catch? Getting that many countries to agree on something is, as you can imagine, really hard.
And this is where we saw a huge shift. After the Cold War ended, the use of these powerful multilateral sanctions just exploded. I mean, for the first 45 years of the UN's existence, they were used only twice. Then, all of a sudden in the early 90s, boom! They were unleashed against Iraq, the former Yugoslavia, Libya, and a whole bunch of others. Sanctions had officially become a major tool in this new world order.
But as sanctions became more and more common, a much darker reality started to come into focus. That clean, theoretical idea of a legal tool began to clash with the messy, often devastating human consequences on the ground.
And this quote really gets to the heart of the moral problem. When you cut off an entire country's economy, who really feels that pain? Let's be honest, it's rarely the political leaders who are the target in the first place. It's the ordinary people, the ones who lose their jobs, can't get medicine for their kids, or suddenly face massive food shortages. The hardship always falls on the most vulnerable.
Which leads you to this pretty unavoidable ethical question, right? If the main effect of your tool is to cause suffering for innocent civilians, can you really call it a fair or just way to enforce the law?
And this is the great paradox of sanctions. They're supposed to be a tool for upholding the law, but they often seem to operate in this kind of lawless space themselves. There are no clear rules for how to use them or how to limit the damage they cause. And here's the really wild part. Some regimes actually learn how to use the sanctions to their own advantage. They can blame the sanctions for all their country's problems and use them as an excuse to crack down on their own people. The very tool meant to punish a government can accidentally end up making it stronger.
And this just highlights one of the biggest criticisms of all. They are applied so inconsistently. I mean, look at this. When Iraq invaded Kuwait, the UN hit them with some of the toughest sanctions in history. But a whole bunch of other countries did very similar things, and nothing, not a single sanction, even when the Security Council condemned them. It really makes you wonder, are sanctions about international law, or are they about the political interests of the most powerful countries?
So, on top of all the moral and legal questions, there's another massive problem. Very often, sanctions just don't work. So let's get into the practical reasons why they so frequently fail to actually achieve what they set out to do.
So how does a sanction just lose its power? Well, it often follows this really predictable pattern. First, a country gets hit with sanctions. Almost immediately, they start scrambling to find workarounds. And in our globalized world, they usually find them. New countries to trade with, new ways to get money. Before you know it, a black market for illegal trade, it's called sanctions busting, starts to boom. And over time, that initial economic shock just gets weaker and weaker.
And there are other major roadblocks, too. For one, the UN doesn't have a global police force. It has to rely on its member countries to voluntarily enforce the sanctions. But enforcing them can cause real economic pain for those countries, especially for neighbors who lose a huge trading partner overnight. It can even hurt businesses in the countries that are imposing the sanctions, which, as you can guess, creates a lot of political pushback at home.
So with all of these problems piling up, the human cost, the legal weirdness, the fact that they often just fail, people started to think, okay, there has to be a better way to do this. And that has led to this search for a smarter, more effective type of sanction. And what they came up with are what people now call targeted or smart sanctions. The basic idea is to stop using that giant economic sledgehammer that hurts everybody and instead use something more like a surgical scalpel. So this means going after the people in charge directly, freezing their personal bank accounts, putting them on no-fly lists, or hitting their military with specific arms embargoes that don't affect the general public.
But even this smarter approach isn't a magic fix. For these targeted sanctions to really have teeth, they still rely on that one thing that's so hard to get: a strong, unified international agreement. And you still have to figure out how to help out the countries that are taking an economic hit to enforce them. If you don't have those two things, even the smartest sanctions are likely to fail.
So, we kind of end up right back where we started. Sanctions exist in this murky twilight zone between war and peace, an area that's just not well defined by international law. They were created to be a tool of peace. But when they're used unfairly, when they cause incredible human suffering, and when they don't even achieve their goals, what do they become? And that leaves us with the big question. Are sanctions really an instrument of law, or have they just become another weapon in a lawless world?